So I'm from Canada. My name is Jamie, and I have a background in accounting and finance from my undergrad days. Since then, I've taken different roles, both in accounting and finance, and most recently in the area of international trade. So that's kind of when I've sort of broadened my horizon per se, and wanted to explore something else outside of what I was comfortable doing. INSEAD appealed because of the different dual degree program that's already structured as part of the program. So the combination that appealed to me is the Johns Hopkins and INSEAD dual degree. So that'll allow me to do an MBA as well as an MA in areas that sort of reaches a little bit outside of finance, which is sort of, I guess, area of expertise, quote unquote. So that's kind of my background. I've been in school for 2.5 years now. It feels like it's a long time coming to make my way to graduation. But yeah, definitely enjoy the whole journey of going through the whole, not just academic journey, but the traveling that it entails. Johns Hopkins has 2 campuses as well. So I've done a leg of my education in Italy, then in the States, now in France. And without COVID, I'm sure there would have been a leg in Singapore as well. I think for me, the whole journey is more about exploration. So for me, it only kind of made sense if I was able to incorporate something new to it, and international relations was part of that. I would say for students who have a really good idea of what they want post graduation, that might be less of consideration. But for people who are, sort of in my case, in a situation similar to mine, where they want to try something new, that's definitely, it opens way more doors than just an MBA program as well. My cohort at Johns Hopkins are, sort of in a variety of different roles now because they have graduated. Some are diplomats and some are working for the World Bank. So that's kind of the sphere that they're sort of gravitating towards. Whereas MBA is a lot more about consulting, banking, startups, and VC, et cetera. So 2 very different worlds. At first, it was challenging because it's a whole different vocabulary and lingo to get adjusted to. And I would say for the first month, I wasn't really sure if I could actually do it. Talking about, for example, foreign policies and military strategies, and all those things are just part of the day-to-day conversation. Knowing, for example, the background of what Turkey has gone through from the days of Ataturk to what it has become in the the modern day secular society. Like, those are all the things that are just so present in the day-to-day life that I just, knew very little about. So that was probably the biggest challenge. Initially, to leave Canada and pack my life in basically 2 luggages was really difficult. I found myself really, struggling, for example, to let go of my turntable, which I was really attached to, my guitar and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a mental shift, and not being able to afford the nice things once in a while in life, or at least having to think about it a bit more thoroughly, was all part of that mental shift. But ultimately, I think just kind of keeping your eyes on the goal and like sort of reminding myself of why am I doing this was really helpful, because I mean, as much as life is different, I wouldn't have wanted any other way. It sounds cliche, but it's true. I would say it's definitely a different kind of learning. And it's unfortunate that I'm catching this while I'm at school, but the way I'm trying to see this is whatever I'm doing, I'm getting affected by COVID. So if I had stayed with my previous employer, then there's definitely a shift to occur in the workplace as well, to adapt to the aftermath of COVID. So I think whatever we're doing, we're getting affected. It's just in my situation, I just happen to be in the surroundings of the school system. So in terms of how nimble the organization has been, I think INSEAD has actually done a fairly outstanding job to quickly adjust to COVID. So for reference, school has moved online, I think probably within 2 weeks. And we were catching a break of half a week when COVID really struck Europe. And we had our next period delayed by 1 week. And afterwards, we had most of our classes moved online. So I think it was fairly quickly how it's, sort of how it adjusted to COVID. Obviously, we hit some bumps on the road at the beginning, but, that's to be expected, with any organizational change of the scale. So it's definitely, I can't say that it's been the same, nor was this what I signed up for, but everything considered, I think, this is, one of the swiftest, shift of experience that I would have expected. I think I was kind of a purist when I signed up for school. For me, this was, an academic experience through and through, and the learning sort of comes more from, the textbooks and, dealing with people from different backgrounds and learning of, different industries, for example. And INSEAD has really shown me that this is way more than just about professional growth. And I think most of the takeaways that I've experienced since INSEAD, they're mostly personal. So how do I, react to different situations where I'm not comfortable, or at least less used to dealing with people from different cultures and, sort of the different, for example, political opinions that you would hold, and how to, sort of have those conversations. And those are sort of, I think, revealing moments that I learn a lot about myself as well. And at INSEAD, dealing with 100+ nationalities is just like a constant daily experience. So that is extremely enriching. And I think I probably undermine the values coming from that. From my personal standpoint, I think I definitely am becoming more aware of my own limitations. And I think a lot of us, come to an environment such as INSEAD thinking we're open-minded and we're open to change, but there's always limits to those things. And I think INSEAD being so explorative definitely, allows you to come to situations where you feel like, okay, this is the limit of what I can stretch. So that's probably, I would say, my biggest change. It's really just a better awareness about myself. When it comes to, gender pay gap and the role of women in society, those are just, things that are very relevant on a daily basis, mostly coming from like group chats, for example. Whenever there's a relevant article, people would share and then discuss. Now, especially in COVID, a lot of those conversations are happening virtually, but they're still happening. In terms of having those conversations happening in class, I think it's present in many classes, although, you could argue that you can always do better in terms of, having more of those conversations. And I can think of, for example, my sustainable finance class talking about gender as one of the, points of discussion. I can think of my ethics class talking about gender. So they're definitely embedded in the curriculum, but I feel like it's just, we're not there yet at the gender equity stage. So there's obviously always more to do. And from the club front, I think having a club is great, but what would be more meaningful is that we sort of live by it every day. And I think right now what we're seeing, at least from my perspective, is that I guess the gender differences are still kind of coming through from, the different students coming from different countries and backgrounds. So yeah, there's a lot more work to do on that front. There are lots of sessions organized by the Career Development Center, mostly drawing from, the last time a crisis of a similar scale happened, which was, the subprime mortgage crisis. So we have, alums talking to us about how they coped with uncertainty then, what were the things that they did to, face an extremely volatile, if existent at all, job market. So school is definitely, sort of spearheading some initiatives on that front. But I think what's more notable is actually professors themselves also kind of taking that on. We have one professor, for example, from a class I just took, who made sure to have different guests to sort of present for each of the session. And now, having moved to online teaching, then it's actually easier for those guests to attend. And as part of those conversations, he'd always make sure that, there's an element to talk about job markets, for example. How do you find opportunities? Tell us of your INSEAD journey. What are the students? What could the students learn from you, from your experiences, etc. So I think the network definitely helps. Having all those people willing to talk to us is extremely helpful. And the fact that they're in all kinds of industries kind of just gives you a really good full picture of what we can do to I guess, face the job market. And that's, again, a really loaded question, I think. I think the students here are extremely brilliant, and I mean it very sincerely. There are many, many people who are smart to the point that they are almost a little intimidating, not because of how they behave, but just because of the breadth of knowledge that they hold. And I find that just to be, we're not talking about one or two, we're talking about most people like falling into that category. And by nature, I think people who are drawn to an experience like INSEAD are sort of, quote unquote, more curious by nature, and they've gathered a breadth of experiences through life. And, sharing those experiences are, obviously adds value as well. For example, I love hiking. I just came back from a hiking trip with a friend, and he's been hiking all over the place. So just, talking about, where have you been to for your best hiking trip, for example, and you learn a lot from those experiences too. So, academically and, outside of academic, it's just people who are brilliant in all kinds of ways. And I think maybe it's just the structure of the program as well, like, sort of condensing it to 1 year. It adds that element of, sort of attracting people who like to to do things intensely and quickly. And having two campuses, obviously, I think that kind of tends to attract people who are perhaps more culturally curious and want to explore different countries. I've always lived in a big city, so coming to a small town, it's a bit of a shift in mindset as well. I'm kind of used to take my car anywhere and have access to, stores that don't really close at all. And so that's not the case here in France, because they take their holidays very seriously. They take their opening hours very seriously. So being okay with not having things available to you at all time is a constant challenge. Now I make it sound like there's nothing that's ever open, which is not true. So that's one thing. And second of all, I guess you mentioned I'm Canadian. I speak French already, but it's a different French that we speak here. So adapting to that, or at least just to be aware that, for example, when I say something, maybe not use the slang, but use the more formal words so that I'm better understood. Things like that was also, I guess, something to just think about more constantly than I would like to. I might want to mention something just a bit more tactical and like logistic related, but currency translations, foreign currency, I guess management would definitely be something that I wish I had taken more into my planning. I think the Canadian dollar has depreciated quite a bit since I started schooling 2.5 years ago. So that definitely puts a bit of a ding into my finances, or at least the budget that I sort of put together 2.5 years ago. So, one way or another, opening a local bank account, for example, or move some assets into, the currency that you're going to be spending ahead of time. Those are probably the things that people don't necessarily think about, but I think could be overlooked and maybe not rightfully so. I'd say I'd recommend INSEAD to someone, or to all those who consider their life, just a constant journey for learning. And, the learning doesn't really stop after INSEAD. I graduated in 2 months. I don't think I'm done with my journey, but INSEAD is definitely a way to show how I would approach learning throughout life.